Hi, in this tutorial we're going to explore the creative modes of the EOS DSLR and discover how they can be used to enhance our creativity in the picture making process. On the top of an EOS DSLR camera there is a mode dial with a number of symbols and letters. The green rectangle represents full auto mode, where the camera has total control, like a point and shoot, and you just have to frame the image and expose. These symbols represent the basic zone modes, but it's these letters M, P, TV, AV and ADEP that indicate the creative modes, which is what we're interested in this tutorial. In full auto, or green mode, the camera chooses every setting for you, deciding how the final picture is going to look in terms of exposure, movement and depth of field. But as you evolve as a photographer, you'll want to have that control in your own hands, so the creative modes on the EOS DSLR give you that power. Let's run through these creative modes one by one and see how they can help you realize your photographic vision. P stands for program, and in program mode, your camera's built-in light measuring device, the light meter, selects an aperture and shutter speed combination based on the ISO setting and the amount of light falling on the subject. Now remember, from a creative point of view, the aperture and shutter speed setting are how we control the final look of the image. For example, your camera might suggest, say, 125th at f11 as an appropriate combination, but you may decide that f2.8, a wider aperture, giving a shallower depth of field, which will make your subject stand out more against a blurry background, would be better. So in the EOS program mode, you simply turn the command dial until the display shows f2.8 and the camera will adjust the shutter speed for you. A great exercise to explore the possibilities offered by program mode is to take an exposure at each of the aperture shutter speed combinations available to see just how much the images change. Also, program mode allows you to manually set the white balance, ISO, autofocus mode, metering mode, flash firing, and other more advanced creative options. Our next creative mode is TV mode, which stands for time value. This gives us what photographers call shutter priority. As the name suggests, you give priority to a chosen shutter speed and the camera then automatically selects the appropriate aperture even if the lighting should change. So you choose TV mode when you decide that for control of movement, either blurring or freezing, is the most important creative element in your photograph. So if you want to freeze a motorbike in mid-air, you should use a very fast shutter speed, like 0.002 of a second, and let the camera choose the aperture needed. Or if you're photographing something like a waterfall or a stream, perhaps a 1-second exposure will give you a nice motion blur to the water. Of course, with such a slow shutter speed, you will need to use a tripod or have some other means of keeping the camera steady to avoid camera shake. AV, our next setting, stands for aperture value or aperture priority. This is where you select an aperture or f-stop because you decide that for your creative purposes, depth of field, or how much is in focus in front of and behind your subject, is the most important consideration. With an aperture selected, the camera then automatically selects the shutter speed. When doing portraiture, you would typically aim to select a wide aperture, say f2.8 or f4, to achieve a shallow depth of field, so that any distracting elements in the background are out of focus. In this situation, the camera will select a faster shutter speed to balance the exposure. When you're using this AV mode, be aware that the camera will select a shutter speed to achieve the correct exposure, and sometimes this shutter speed may be too slow for you to be able to successfully handhold the camera. This is most likely to happen when you've selected a small aperture, say f16, to achieve a greater depth of field. ADEP, in this mode, you can ensure that the important areas in your photograph are in focus by selecting the nearest and furthest objects you want to keep sharp, and the camera will then set the aperture required for this. Again, in this mode, you need to pay careful attention to the shutter speed that the camera chooses to make sure you don't get camera shake. And finally, we come to M, which stands for manual. In this mode, you can adjust both aperture and shutter speed independently, using the LCD display or the display inside the viewfinder to help achieve correct exposure. This is a great mode to use for those times when you might want to intentionally under or overexpose a shot to achieve a particular creative effect. All of these creative modes are ways that your EOS camera can help you realise your creative vision and makes the picture taking process a little easier and a lot more fun. Explore all of them, perhaps by shooting a picture in full auto and then comparing it with your results in a different creative mode. Upload your experiments to the project area of this page for others to share and learn from. You'll be surprised how quickly your skill level will improve with practice.